Hello, everyone, for the first edition of Stories from the Heart of the Jakuls. For this introductory episode, I've decided to start with a story very well known to the Jakuls, one told many ways with many differences, each unique to the storyteller and the situation it's told within. So sit back, get comfortable, grab a snack. I'm your host, Lothran, and this is The Lonesome Child. He ran from his teacher and the others yet again. He felt their laughter and their cries upon his back as he fled, one arm over his face, trying desperately to hold the rivers of tears back behind the dam of his eyes. He didn't watch where his steps took him as he fled, his clothing ripping on several hungry branches while speeding through the low woods, but eventually his bare feet splashed into frigid water. The boy looked about himself. He'd heard of this place. The grown-ups spoke of it in whispers. The murky bog, with its cloak of dark mist and its echoing, bubbling rumbles. He wasn't supposed to be here. No one was supposed to be here. "Why, hello there," said seemingly the surface of the water as it settled back into silent stillness. "Who's there?" the boy cried, stumbling backward from the edge of the black, stagnant, corpse-reeking water. He felt quite suddenly how cold and alone he was, so far from the comfort of the village. "Don't you know anything?" The surface of the dark water quivered like thick pudding that had been jabbed by a massive finger. "I know lots of stuff. Pretty much everything." The boy ended his boisterous, blustered lie in a bit of a shout that made him sound as if he knew nothing at all. After all, he'd run from his comrades for not knowing what he so obviously should have, what everyone should know. "Oh well, my apologies." The table of liquid shifted, pushing up and out of itself, ever so slightly, and staying there, as if just for the feat of disobeying the laws of physics. I had no idea I was in the presence of such a learned scholar. "You should be sorry," the boy replied, full of heady vim and vigor he'd never felt before. "I suppose I should." The lump of water tightened and swelled up, without any being from underneath coming into view. The boy knew he should be afraid, should be trembling in his ragged clothes, but so drenched in gleeful pride and brilliant belief, he pushed ever onward, even as he fell back half a step in his stance. "I'm practically Rykarn already," the boy boasted in flat-out impossibility. "Oh, my infinite apologies, Grand Ruler." The knot of heavy black water pulled back without a sound, rising further from the rest of its contents. "But you do know what's behind you, right?" "I'm afraid of nothing. I know everything there is to know," the boy asserted fiercely back at his opponent, placing his right hand on the hilt of the small knife at his hip. The pillar of abyssal fluid seemed to tilt toward the boy, without altering its position where it stood on the top of the swamp's water line. "If you say so, It must be true. The boy tilted back in an arrogant fashion, hammering a fist against his other shoulder. I'm always right. It was then that he felt his balance betray him. He fell backward onto large, clawing fingers held by immeasurably strong hands. They tore through his clothes and skin as if they were dry leaves. He cried out in terror as he was dragged back from the shoreline, blood splattering the already sodden plants as his thrashing limbs trampled them in their wake. The hands, each as long as one of his legs, from foot to knee, broke each of his flailing limbs one at a time. He screamed in utmost agony as the tower of murky water stared on in sullen silence. "Please!" the boy shouted, reaching out with his left hand right before it was snapped in twain, and the entire limb was rent from its socket to be tossed at the looming fortress of black water. "Thanks for the assistance, friend," a hollow, empty whisper of a voice said to the water, even as it continued to rip apart the soft flesh of the boy's stomach. The creature laughed heartily at the boy's mindless cries of suffering. The water sucked the morsel into its modular form. "I am not your friend, low one, but I appreciate the gift nonetheless." As the boy's guts were hefted from his still spurting body, the light draining from his eyes, the pillar of water receded back whence it came. Minutes later, scant moments to be honest, the teacher and several adult jackals emerged from the thick foliage, chasing the low one off with burning black fire arrows, finding only tatters of cloth and skin and a few shards of bloody bone, all that was left of their lonesome child. The surface of the swamp rippled. I could tell you of the boy, were you to come a little. The creature darted off, hissing, in response to the sting of a hateful black fire arrow scorching through its side. And so concludes tonight's tale. This was The Lonesome Child. I am your host, Lothran. Tomorrow we discuss what this story means and why it is told among the jackal around their campfires. And as always, I encourage each and every one of you to stay safe out there